Hello and welcome to show number 79 of the 1420 Sports Podcast, for beer with a sports talk and a whole lot more. Unofficially brought to you today by Bud Light, the beer that never fills you up and will never let you down. I am your host, Brent Radlinski, recording from the basement studios of Yankee Tavern North in Lethbridge, Alberta. Today I'm joined by Brokeback Nanton's sixth favorite son, Matt Muldoon, from his home in Claresholm, Alberta. I talked about the rule changes Major League Baseball is going to try in the minor leagues this season. Some are good, some aren't. Matt and I will dive deeper into those rule changes today. The 6-4-3 double play, a game-winning home run, a gap that looked like it could be a triple. We'll talk about some of our favorite things about the game of baseball. As Elaine Bennett said in an episode of Seinfeld, war, what is it good for? We'll discuss advanced stats and if anybody actually knows what they mean and how to calculate them. Saturdays around the tavern always seem to be a good time for a Hall of Fame discussion. I'll name some players. Matt will let me know whether or not they're Hall of Fame worthy. Today should be a fun show, everybody, so sit back, grab your beverage of choice, and as always, let's get into her. All right, we're joined today by Matt Muldoon, the pride of Brokeback Nanton, biggest Atlanta Miles fan in southern Alberta. There's no getting around that.
Might be the whole
only
world.
Person I had to rent a front-end loader to deliver his 1420 hat for the size of his head. Matt, you showed me before we got on the air here the size of that coconut, a size 8. That's Andre the Giant size, kind of a lid there. Your mother must not like you very much, my friend?
Never has. No. She's size 8 Profit. They're not the easiest thing to find. You got to pretty much order them.
Special order from Nanton Tarp and Awning to get that thing taken care of. Anyways, we got to talking last week a little bit. I sent you the link from Michael K show about baseball rule changes. I know you're a baseball guy. They had their take on the rule changes. I had mine. Let's start with how they're going to try in the minor leagues, which I think is a fantastic idea before it gets to the big money and the show and everything else. To try with the minor leagues where nobody cares because nobody's watching, they're not on TV. The one that I didn't like, and we were texting back and forth about this, was the pick-off move, the step-off move that's going to eliminate guys like Andy Pettit, which was a phenomenal move that he had. He picked guys off left and right. What do you think about that, and why do you think that rule change would have come in?
Well, what I hate so much about baseball rule changes in particular is baseball's the one game where like these old men have like idle time and they just start picking apart the game. And it never seems to be for the betterment of the game. Like when the rule changes came in hockey, anyone with a brain understood what was happening. We're going to get away from like the clutching and grabbing to allow the better players to shine. And all of these rule changes I've heard in baseball, not one of them suggests to me that it's helping a better player become even greater. All this is doing is making mediocre players more mediocre to get a chance to get on the board. And that's what I hate about like this Andy Pettit rule about like you have to take your foot off the rubber. That one in particular is so offensive to me because Andy Pettit and pitchers that are left-handers who are super technical with their pickoff move, like that's a part of their game. That's a huge part of Andy Pettit's technical pitching ability. He could deliver the ball and not break his leg towards home plate to balk. He would just step off and throw you out. And there's nothing you could do about it. He was that good. I remember watching him and Ichiro battle. Like, I don't know how many pitches he threw to first trying to catch Ichiro, and Ichiro's trying to steal on him. And this sequence went on forever and ever and ever. And it was amazing to watch. But I feel like if you get rid of those rules, you're handicapping a true, legit professional at what he's doing. You're not stopping a person who doesn't have a pickoff move, who's wasting time. Like, I really think you're just stifling the quality players of the game.
The reason I read up over the week why they decided to change that rule, and they're trying to increase base stealing a little bit, but the analytics guys and the nerds who've taken over the sport in the front offices, they're going to tell you that they're not running unless they got an 80% chance of stealing a base. And only one guy in the history of baseball could pull that off, and that's Ricky Henderson. God, I love Rick. Love me some Rick.
Yeah,
So why would they hamper one thing to try to increase something that's not happening anyways? Base stealing's been out of the game for a number of years. Like there's guys like 30 stolen bases, 35 stolen bases is what winning titles now. To get rid of a guy's move it's not going to increase base running. It's not going to increase stealing, in my opinion.
No, and I don't think it is. Like I understand I do understand their logic. I think they're saying like if we hamper this pitcher enough that he has to physically move his foot, there's no opportunity for him to pick that guy off. There's just not. If you have to make that many moves, the guy at first is like whatever. But I don't think the way that you increase the excitement of Major League Baseball is by eliminating those sorts of moves, is by changing the opportunity for a pitcher to catch someone at first, the opportunity for like it has to be a cat and mouse game. Like I don't know. I just feel like
there's no doubt the game of baseball, it's not as exciting as it was 20 years ago. There's no getting around that with the shifts and analytics and guys swinging for the fence and base hits. You got to agree with that. The analytics guys are right that stringing together 3 base hits in a row to score a run, it's pretty tough and it's hard to do. So that's why guys are the launch angles a thing and swinging for the fence and home runs are more of a thing and strikeouts and everything else, because baseball's turned into a feast or famine with guys at the plate where it's home run or nothing. A lot of guys, like you look at guys like Stanton, Judge for the Yankees, and then you go to Bautista with the Jays when they're in their glory years there. That no good little puke Altuve hitting a home run off for Aroldis Chapman. We won't talk about that. Look at the smile on your face, you cocksucker. Anyways, how the home runs just become more of the part of the game, and bat to ball ratio isn't a thing as much as it was. What do you think about changing? Like, I'm a ban the shift guy wholeheartedly. The way they're going to do it in the minor leagues, they're going to have, you got to have guys with their feet on the infield, 2 guys separated at second base. They can run as soon as the ball's delivered and go stand somewhere else. But I'm all for it the way the game's played. It's just a ground ball at the middle used to be a ground ball at the middle. Now it's a ground ball at second base.
Yep, it is, and I agree with you. I agree with you. Like at first I was completely against banning the shift. Like when people would talk about like no more shifting, it just made sense to me that, you know, like when I was texting you, like Jason Giambi is an excellent example, right? Like that guy never hit a baseball that wasn't down the first base line, not one time in his entire career.
Mark Teixeira the same way, yeah.
Yeah, and I understand how that shift organically happened, but what I do like more about is if they ban the shift, like what you're saying, like feet in the infield, opposite sides of second base, it's going to start to promote like more unbelievable highlight reel stuff and guys that are more versatile at those positions, like Ozzie Smith. Like nobody's been like Ozzie Smith in the last bunch of years because they've never had to be. Like they're not as it's not as dynamic. And I think if as much as I don't like batters that like they have one move, like a one trick pony in the major leagues is sort of an abstract thing to me, you know, like you said, Teixeira and Giambi, those guys that only mash the ball down the line. Like, Jesus Christ, how do these guys not manage to get a batting coach and hit opposite field or hit where players weren't? You know what I mean? Like how? So I don't know.
Like Paul O'Neill. I know you don't want to talk about Yankee guys only, but Paul O'Neill said it was not hard to hit the other way. You just take pitch the other way. He said it wasn't hard to do, but on the other hand, if you're paying a guy $25 million to hit 50 home runs, you don't want him pushing a ball down the left field line. Or bunting down the left field line, hit it where they ain't. I've heard a lot of things. Hit it where they ain't. Well, I'm giving you $28 million a year. I don't want you hitting base hits or bunting down third for an infield hit. I don't.
For sure.
So yep. I don't know. Another one that the number of times a pitcher can throw over to first base, you get one. If you throw over the second time and don't get the guy out, it's an automatic balk. The guy gets second. So they're trying to increase some action at first. That rule's stupid. That is stupid. That one isn't going to work.
Which rule was it? Sorry, say it again.
They're trying it in low A ball, like the Pioneer League, where the pitcher can only throw over to first base once, and if he throws over the second time and doesn't get the guy out, it's an automatic balk, so the guy gets second automatically. So once the guy throws over once, the guy, the first move, he's gone to second base. It's going to increase stolen base opportunities. I get it. But you're giving a free pass.
But that's it. But that's just in
so
my
it changes
opinion.
the game 100%. That one, it's not what it was 20 years ago, let alone what it was today.
But and this is what I can't stand about these rule changes. Like all these rule changes I've heard I hear them as just another rule change for this day and age. Like this, everyone gets a trophy. We're going to change it so everyone's happy about what's going on. Like that's ridiculous to me. If you only allow a pitcher to throw it to first base one time, if you allow him to only throw it one time, all you're doing is promoting a person who's not as good to be able to advance further. That's ridiculous. Like that's not the game. That's not how this game is played.
Giambi steals 40 bases.
Yeah.
Like, go.
Yeah.
Like how many bases would Ricky how many bases would Ricky Henderson got? How many would he have stolen if that was real when he played? 200?
100 million.
Like all of them.
Every single pitch, he would have been gone.
Gone. See you later. It's ridiculous. Another one that they changed the size of the bases, which goes from 90 feet and between the bases. It's kind of it's stupid to me. I don't understand what that's doing. They say it's to decrease collisions. It's a bullshit call that they're changing the size of the base. It's not going to change collisions. There's no collisions at second base, and to chase Utley at second base with the Dodgers and the Mets. It ain't changing that. And now that that rule's been changed anyways, where you have to slide into the bag and you can't be the ole and just trying to reach it. The one thing, it's coming no matter what, automated umpires. They're trying it in the Atlantic League. They did it in the Arizona Fall League a couple of years ago. It's coming in Major League Baseball. I don't care for it personally. Baseball's a game of mistakes. I like the calls to be right, but man, like
I don't see, and this is what I don't want automated umpires either. Like that's so much of the game is the interaction between an umpire and players, the umpire and a manager, what happens on the field. Like it flavors the game so much to have umpires there. And for the amount, people complain a lot for umpires making mistakes. And I mean, if you really look at mistakes that umpires make, what they call a pitch wrong every 1,000 pitches, or like,
they're good.
They're amazing.
They're really good, except for Joe West. But anyways, Cowboy Joe is not very good. But anyways, but yeah, they're good. They don't like if they get 98% right. That's good.
For sure it is.
Going 102 miles an hour sometimes.
But a good back catcher has relationships with these umpires, and it is changing the outcome of the game. And I think that it should. Like, I really feel that if a back catcher is good at his job, he's massaging the zone for the umpire. The umpire is letting him know what he thinks along the way. They're going back and forth. Like it helps the flow of the game. It's important to have that combination of pitcher, batter, back catcher, like all that stuff.
It's going to take away the art form of framing a pitch, and that's an art form. It really is.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, if it's got to go inside the little box that Fox has on TV or TSN or whoever, it's got to go inside the box, but the box can be very deceiving. There's no getting around that. And the way that the trajectory of the ball and everything else, I've said it before on the podcast here that if they bring umpire autumn or replay back or into the Wimble, I'm out. I don't want to be told that I'm wrong. Like I don't. Like it's part of the game.
For sure.
I get it. When you got millions and millions of dollars in the line, you want to get calls at first base right. There has been some World Series that have been altered because of bad calls at first base and home plate and whatever. Yogi Berra still says that Jackie Robinson was out when he tried to steal home. Well, Yogi's passed away now, obviously, but right to the day he died, he said he was out at home plate. So, and then Yogi said something along the lines, he was asking his granddaughter about this instant replay stuff. He goes, we had that back in the 19 whatever World Series, it would have showed that Jackie Robinson was out. I get it. Getting the call right's the most important thing, but players can make mistakes all the time, and no one says fuck all about that.
No, but that's it, right? And like, God bless Yogi, but like that became a part of that becomes like that lore of baseball. Like, thank God there wasn't instant replay, and thank God that Yogi talked shit his entire life that no, he was out at home. No, he wasn't. Yogi, they called him safe. Like that's a part of baseball. Like it's not, you know, I see this, I don't know, the Hall of Fame conversation is a whole other thing, but like, I really think that baseball should be looked at for what it is in that day and age. Like if that's how they were playing it then, that's how you keep playing it. You know what I mean? Like, that's why steroids don't bother me. That was a snapshot of what it was for the time. And I feel like if you start getting rid of stuff, you start losing all those things.
No, we'll get into that in a second, but yeah, I get now one thing that baseball could do with the instant replay, and I thought about this the other day, is don't let the guys in the dugout and the guys in the clubhouse, don't let them check the monitor, because then they know.
Mhm.
If don't have the earpieces and what's going on, if Aaron Boone thinks that the call was wrong at first base, he has to call for the replay right now.
Mhm.
Don't let them look, waste time. There's 30 seconds in there. They want to speed the game up. Pretty simple. If Booney thinks that the guy was out or safe at first base, he has to say, check that right now.
Mhm.
And then it's
Yep.
done. Or another thing they could do is maybe have an earpiece on the umpire and have an umpire upstairs and saying, hey, you blew it. And it's
Yep.
over.
Yeah. But you're right. It has to be immediate. And if it's not, it's going to become just another Las Vegas card game. If it's not, if you have people, like you're saying, if you have people all over the place and like, check this, check that, do this, do that, like there has to be some sort of isolation of what's happening on the field. I mean, this is what Houston, like how Houston cheated specifically was like, they didn't allow that bubble to maintain on the field. And I mean, everyone's been stealing signs since the dawn of time, but you weren't supposed to be signaling to that person specifically what was coming. That wasn't.
They just took it to a whole nother level is what happened there.
They did. They took it to a whole other level, but it was had they just been like stealing, had they been stealing signs and like once in a while, here comes the fastball, here comes a curveball. Nobody knows. It happens all the time. Yeah. Somebody sees a sign, they're like, I'll hit this one. But Jesus Christ, like banging the garbage can, telling everyone what's coming. I mean, like it's not an appropriate thing to do. It's not the game, you know?
It's actually insane. Anyways, on another note, we'll get off this topic, get into another topic, but just came on Bleacher Report before we went on air. Cubs prospect Jesus Camargo got busted with 21 pounds of meth and oxys while traveling through the state of Colorado early on Saturday morning. That's a whole nother level of getting into her.
Well, I mean,
wow.
Baseball and football are two games that have I assume that he didn't get into having a huge amount of meth on his possession just because he was a ball player. I assume he grew up in a place where that was an acceptable thing to do.
What I read is that he was offered $500 to take it from point A to point B, is what I read. And so now he's in jail forever, probably.
Yeah, for a long time.
He won't be pitching for the South Bend Cubs this year by any means. He should have just borrowed $500 from somebody, maybe. Minor leagues don't make any money, but $500 for the best way to avoid a situation, Matt, is to avoid a situation. Don't carry 21 pounds of meth.
It is like, what are you doing? Like, you have other things to worry about than taking a package for someone somewhere. Unless it's a package full of baseballs, leave it there. Like, you don't need it. Yeah. Like, you don't need it. You don't need it. Just leave it on the curb, walk away from it, pretend it didn't happen. Like,
how does that conversation come about? Hey, what are you doing today? Nothing. Do you want to transport 21 pounds of meth across state lines?
But that's exactly where he should have said, what are you doing today? He should have said, what are you doing today? Working out because I need to make the major leagues. That's what I'm doing today. That's what he should have said.
Get busted for speeding. Like, I've never transported meth, but I'm thinking if I was, I would be following all the traffic rules personally.
Mm-hmm. And you know what irritates me more than that? He was probably speeding in his car, and he's one of these jerk off pitchers that saunters out to the mound. He's never ran out to the mound once, but he speeds down the highway with a trunk full of meth.
Strolls out there like he's Travolta when he's going on Saturday Night Fever. Same thing. Anyways, make sure we're up to 6,500 listens and all that stuff. So things are advancing really well for the 1420 podcast. Be sure to talk to people about the show. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, everywhere, every app you can possibly imagine. We've done a lot of work getting onto those things. But when you do listen, make sure you give us a good 5-star rating or a 4-star rating. It allows us to stay on Apple Podcasts, because if you don't get ratings, they say you're not good enough to be on Apple, so get out of here. And Apple's not my friend most of the time lately, but anyways, we'll get out of that another day. Fucking Apple. Mattress, the game of baseball has been near and dear to my heart since I can remember. Grew up, there's 2 Little League parks across the street from my parents' house in Fort McLeod on 22nd Street. Not one, but 2 Little League parks. It was phenomenal. home runs and double plays and stolen bases and everything else. And the people who gather around the ballpark, right from Little League to American Legion to the WCBL to right to the minor leagues and to the major leagues. Every time you go to a ballpark, you can find something fun to watch and something to talk about. And I find a sense of community more around a baseball park than at a hockey game. Matt, Nate, what's a couple things that the game of baseball that you really like compared to other sports?
What I loved about baseball in particular was your own ability to play really well or really bad while still being on a team. Like it's such an individual effort attached to what your team was. So like you could, you could yourself pursue a home run, or you could yourself pursue some stolen bases to benefit the team. But it was a game that was like your own. Sometimes I think when you're playing hockey, like if you're a winger, a centerman, defenseman, whatever, sometimes a lot of the things you're doing is just to support the greater effort. Like you're not supposed to do anything other than support the guy on the puck. Where baseball was like every 8-9 batters comes, it's your turn. It's your turn to do it all over again. And you're by yourself with that loser holding that rawhide in his hand. Like it's such a great game. I don't know. I love that about it. It was this singular thing, but it was on a team.
That's one thing I didn't think about, but like playing the game, everybody has that Hall of Fame moment, whether you're playing in Little League or even mixed slow pitch or whatever. Everybody has that catch that they made, and baseball offers that other sports don't really, because it's such, like you said, an individualistic game where you made a diving catch to win the B-side tournament in Polson, Montana, or wherever the hell it is, or the game-winning hit. And then the other thing I never thought about this is, if you go 0 for 4 and your team wins, do you think about the 0 for 4?
No, not if you're well, yes. If you're a compulsive weirdo that needs to get better, that 0 for 4 is murdering you, which you're probably not going to be 0 for 4 for very long. But if you're just another person that's blending into the background of another baseball team, you don't give a shit. If your team's winning, like you don't care.
Yeah, like looking back, like I played a lot of like Little League baseball. We went some big, like our little team that could in Fort McLeod. We were quite successful for some unknown reason. Well, I was really good.
That's it. Eh?
I was just bigger than everybody when it came down to it. So we had a couple of guys who were close like the birthday things and everything else. So we were actually quite successful. But talking Little League, how about glory days? Hey, anyways, just a loser. But I don't like. I remember winning and losing games, but I don't recall how I fared at the plate. Like I remember pitching and defensive plays, but now that we talk about this, I don't recall base hits or home runs or any, like it doesn't really resonate for some reason.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because like when I think of playing baseball, all like same as you, all I can think of is like being with a team losing or winning these games. I remember playing for the JT Foster Knights, and we had to play Myers out of Tabor, I believe. Yeah. And like Jesus Christ, they had a good ball team just for being like a bunch of high school kids, right?
Were you there when they had those two twins? I can't remember their last name, but they had two twin players who are around your age. They were really good. What's the Catholic school in Tabor?
Oh, I know what you mean.
Anyways,
like Redeemer. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, they were amazing. But the same as you, I can't remember any individual things I did in baseball other than one home run in high school. It's the only thing I can remember of myself. Everything else was like the team, what we were doing, if we won, if we lost, where we ate, shit like that.
Yeah, it's strange that you remember the stupid things like that, but how you fared to the plate, which was your own time to shine, and you don't recall it. Maybe it says something about our batting averages. Maybe, who knows?
Probably.
Yeah, guaranteed. When you go to a game, Matt, what's like? Are you a pitcher's duel kind of guy, or a bunch of runs, or defensive specialty? Like what kind of, like when you're at a game, or are you I want to see it all?
I want to see the whole thing. Like it so depends if it's the Okotoks Dogs or if it's the Lethbridge Bulls. Like I just want to be there. And the one thing I want to see is I want to be able to pick out a player who's leagues above everyone else. Like I want to watch enough of it to understand how good one or two of these kids are.
Yeah.
that's what I like to do. I like to see who's more talented, why they're more talented. But like when I go to a major league game, it's very specific. Like I'll pick different seats to sit in
Yeah.
depending on like who's pitching, who's batting. But like I just I love the game for what it is. Like if there's a pitcher's duel, I love that. If someone's smashing home runs, that's great too. But like I think like all sports, I really like to watch them just to see who's better. I want to see someone get dominated by somebody who you're like, Jesus Christ, how are they doing that?
I asked Dave this question a few weeks ago. We had a little question answer about baseball. I'm going to ask you one. If you were at a game with some friends in the sun, having a hot dog and everything else, and it's spit and spits, and there's a group of you, and the guy's he's in the fifth, pitches in the sixth, hasn't given up a hit yet. Do you lean over and say, this son of a bitch hasn't given up a hit yet? Or are you keep your mouth shut, you don't want to jinx it?
Screaming it at the top of my lungs to mess with everyone in my section. Absolutely. I've done it before. I will do it again. If there is a no-no on the way or there is something happening and everyone's like, oh, I'm like, here comes the no-no. Yeah, no, I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm.
Couple, like 2 years ago now, there was no Wimble last year. I was working the plate, Medicine Hat versus Weyburn. Weyburn was terrible. Like, so, not Weyburn, sorry, Melville, sorry. Terrible. Like, Legion teams would have beat this team. Anyways, Medicine Hat pitcher got a no-hitter going about the 6th or 7th inning. And I mentioned to the catcher for Medicine Hat, I said, hey, he doesn't have a hit yet. And the catcher turned around, looked at me, goes, are you fucking stupid? I said, well, yeah, a little bit. A little bit. So anyways, we had a chuckle about it later on during the season as it progressed. Yeah. I don't know.
But baseball players are so precious about it. Like if you talk about it, it's not going to happen. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, his arm isn't going to change miraculously. His arm angle's not going to change because I said no hitter from row 48 at Yankee Stadium.
But you know what I mean? Like, no, it's never happened in hockey that like I've told you this story. Ty Rimmer was the goalie for the Lethbridge Hurricanes, and I watched him stop 72 shots against the Edmonton Oil Barons, and nobody was saying in the third period like he might get a shutout here. He had already stopped 60 shots. It was
That's
like,
enough.
Holy Jesus.
That's enough. That's 2 games worth of work.
Yeah, for sure it is.
I don't think I had 60 shots hit me my entire career. It wasn't very good. Check out the old hockey DB. It's quite embarrassing. The 6-4-3 double play is a thing of beauty. If they did come up with a thing of banning the shift, more base runners, balls in play, would that make the game better?
To me, no. For my money, no.
Yeah.
No, it might make it. I'm sure they're going to get the game to start to be played the way that they want it to. But for my money, it's not better. And I, like you say, the 6-4-3 double plays, like it's artwork. Like if you have players that can constantly roll up 6-4-3, like it's art. That's it. Like they're that good. And I think that that's an important part of the game. I think that shows the professional caliber of so many of these guys.
My sister got me a t-shirt for Christmas a few years back, the 6-4-3 = 2 t-shirt. The looks I get when I wore that to the grocery store, people are like, that's bad math, man. Like this. It's a baseball thing. Don't worry about it. You try to explain it and they're during the headlights.
Sure. Yeah. And you know what? The sort of the funniest thing to me, like going to Major League Baseball games, was how many people were out of touch with that sort of lingo, like the 6-4-3.
Yeah.
Like so many people sitting around you were like, oh, there's a double play, but there's only like every once in a while somebody would be speaking that sort of officiating lingo. And I remember being really surprised in the United States, being like, you guys aren't aware of this? Like,
yeah, that's one thing I missed out last year. And you go to games and the banter you can have with people in the stands that you'll never see them again. Yep. And you can sit a couple of years back when my sister and brother joined me in the Bronx and we were Oakland days and Mike Ford hit a walk-off home run. The Yankees they weren't hit. They had 2 hits through 8 innings and they shouldn't have won the game. They didn't win the game anyways, but there was a guy sitting next to me, diehard Yankee fan. And he was complaining the entire time about how about how bad the Yankees were playing and everything else. And the banter you can have with people at a game, and you don't really have to pay attention until you hear this. And then the crack of the bat, and you can turn your head and get away from the conversation you were having. It's the greatest game in the world for me. Like nothing compares to it. Hockey, you have to watch so much more. You have to watch it because things are happening so quickly, and but nothing happens. Like, to me, I'm going to get a lot of feedback from hockey fans, but to me, nothing happens in a hockey game. It's just a puck bouncing around, guy skating and hits the board, dumped out, whatever, shot on goal, go down the other way, do the same thing. Whereas baseball, so much is happening when the ball's not in motion. It's such an art to it that people don't understand. And like, I get it when people say that they think baseball's boring. I get it. But once they watch, they go, oh, okay, this makes more sense now.
But exactly what you said is why I worry about these rule changes. Like, they're trying to speed up a game that I don't think needs to be sped up. There's a new generation, and it's obviously a new generation of kids think it needs to be sped up. And that's what I have a problem with, is like, why is this why? And I understand, like, they're the market, they're what's coming up. But I really think that if you're going to change the rules, it has to add to what you've just said. Like, and I think that these rule changes that we talked about before, they're taking away from the game, right? Like, I think that I also believe it to be the best game in the world, because there's so much happening. Like, it's so slow, but it's so fast. Like, you have to be intelligent to be a good baseball player. You just do. You've never ever seen an amazing baseball player that was a dummy. It's easy to be a dummy as a hockey player or a boxer or a lot of other sports, football players, but baseball players are just, there's a different form of intelligence. There has to be.
And I think that comes along with baseball fans as well. There's a different level of intelligence compared to I'm going to get crucified for this on social media, but I find that football fans might be the least intelligent fan that there is. Head up, good, go.
I totally agree with you. I hate football, and I hate football because at its essence, all football is one old man wearing headphones is playing a game of chess against another old man with headphones on, and he has the cream of the physical crop. That's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, there's obviously good athletes in football. I never got behind something that was like the guy on the sidelines is telling you what to throw, and in the event you're not paying attention or you want to change it, it has to be called an audible, or it has to be called like, I'll change it on the fly. How about you just play the game the way you want to on the fly? Like, don't listen to him.
Like, that's the one thing about baseball. They, like, once without a guy 60 feet 6 inches away throwing the little white thing across the plate, nothing happens. Nothing happens. And when that happens, other things happen. It moves on from there. It's a great game. Once we're this COVID thing, and we're not going to get into it. Once this COVID thing gets in, vaccinations and everything, not just vaccines, but vaccinations, get out, go to a game, enjoy it. Maybe go across, if the border ever opens again, who knows what's going on there, and go to watch a game and enjoy it like we have in the past. Anyways, new merchandise coming up. The producer's working on some stuff as we speak. Hats and t-shirts and sweatshirts and koozies, and I don't know what's going on in her head half the time, but take a look at it, make some purchases, and to help support the show. I hate to say it, but the nerds have overtaken baseball, and I say it with the kindest term of affection. The nerds, like, not like Revenge of the Nerds, the 1980s movie. If you haven't seen it, make sure you catch that. I can't remember their names. What a movie that was. Advanced analytics mean nothing to me. I don't even know what WAR means. I know it's wins above replacement, but I've tried to read up on it, and I've got about a third of a paragraph through it, and I don't care enough to keep going on. And this guy moved, and then something happens, and apparently Mike Trout has the best WAR ever, and he's going to be the next coming of, like, his WAR is better than Mickey Mantle's. Last time I checked, Mike Trout hasn't won a World Series championship yet.
Who's Mike Trout? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's great, but who's Mike Trout? He's done nothing. So why? That's what I hate about these advanced stats. It's like saying you're the best player on the worst team. Good for you. What's that? And $2 will buy you a coffee, and not a very good one.
Well, that Max coffee's pretty good. I don't know, but anyways, the advanced stats drive me nuts. I don't understand them enough. Either you get a hit or you don't. Like, batting average is a thing. One that I saw, win probability added. Well, you know what your win probability is? You score more runs than the other team, the probability goes way up.
For sure.
Like, I don't weighted on base average and some other. I'll read this one. weighted runs created plus. I don't even know what that means.
No, but I don't think anyone does. And all of this was born and bred out of, before the movie happened. This was Billy Beane and the bunch of donkeys in Oakland trying to compete with everyone with no payroll and trying to play a numbers game. Like that's what all of this was bred out of. And I'm sure that it helps a lot when you're breaking down the stats and finding out who's batting more appropriately. But like you said about like this WAR thing, you hear about this. The only time you hear about this WAR stat is every time someone talks about Mike Trout, and they say it like it's validating who he is as a ball player. Like he's nobody to me. Like he's good.
I'm gonna make an effort now. Oh, lost you for a second there, Matt.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm going to make a concerted effort this season to watch some Angels games and try to figure out this Mike Trout thing. I get it. He's great. Like I get the stats. I understand it. But you give me, and don't assassinate me, this Muldoon. You give me Derek Jeter any day of the week over Mike Trout.
Well, yeah. But if anyone says no, they're a moron. Like honest to God, I don't know how you would pick that. They're comparable on the field and what one's going to do for you off the field. And that's another problem I have with these WAR stats, these advanced stats. It doesn't say anything about who they are off the field or in the clubhouse. Not one thing. It doesn't speak to what sort of person they are. It doesn't speak to what their work ethic is. Well, sort of, I guess, if you're taking all of their ability to bat and run and do all that sort of stuff. But like, there's so much more to being a ball player who's winning World Series titles or being somebody or dragging his team along with him. Like Trout hasn't risen his team above. Like he's obviously like, why isn't he demanding more? Why isn't he? I feel like if he was more of a well-rounded ball player, leader sort of a person, things would be changing for him. But he's been the same guy since he came in the league, which is a really good ball player. But I don't know, for whose money?
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, and then the pitching stats, strikeout to walk ratio. I don't need to have a number posted to that says if I strike out more people than I walk, I'm going to have a pretty good career or a good game or a decent season. I don't need stats that say that tell me this. I don't like. Is this more for fantasy baseball? I don't understand. Like you get a hit. If you get more hits than the other team, there's a good chance you're going to win, unless it's a 1-0 walk off or something like that. They're trying to make baseball too hard, I think. Mm-hmm. Like we were just bragging about how smart baseball fans are, but now we're saying, well, the numbers are, wow, we don't need to know the numbers. I think baseball more than any other sport has an eye test factor that gets lost with all these stats.
It does, but you're exactly right. A fan's intelligence and a baseball player's intelligence has nothing to do with these advanced statisticians that they're taking out of Harvard and Yale and MIT and crunching numbers into baseball. Like they're two separate things. Like you don't. I mean, you don't win baseball games by the stats. I don't think. Like there's so much more that comes into it. You could have it might on an average dog day afternoon and Saturday on a Saturday, you know what I mean? A double header, the first game, you could have two teams and statistically one might be better than the other and that team might win. But when it gets into September, October, what are those stats? Like you got to have guys that are like gutting it out. They'll rise above things. Like it just, the advanced stats only go so far. Like there's still people playing the game. If the advanced stats would matter to me if they were robots playing the game, if it was just hardware and software.
Yeah, it's great, but I don't understand how it's gotten, especially in the last 10 years or so, how it's changed so immensely. You look at the World Series last year, I can't remember his name, but when the manager for the Tampa Bay Rays pulled Blake Snell in the 5th inning when he only gave up 2 hits or whatever it was, and his pitch count was down, but they had it scripted how they're going to go through the game. Managers today aren't like they were back 30, 40, 50 years ago, obviously, with Billy Martin, Tommy Lasorda, and the like, where there was and Sparky Anderson was one of the best. there was a gut feel, and these old grizzled vets, they knew how to manage a game, and there was eye test. I think is lost the game of baseball. The nerds have a script for every team now, and how they're and I know it's not better.
It's not, but this is what I really believe is happening right now in baseball is we've gone through say 10 years. Like we've gone through 10 years of baseball without an outstanding manager. Like I can't think of a manager in the last 10 years that I'm like, yeah, that's one of the greatest ever.
Yeah.
But I think what's happening now, especially, is the statisticians they're pumping all this stuff out. But the next great manager is going to be a person who understands both facets of the game. They understand how the game was played in the late 90s and before, and they're going to understand these new stats, and they're going to start to be able to play both sides of the fence to be able to manage baseball games appropriately. Like you said, pulling a pitcher in the fifth inning that's, struck out 2 guys because they had it scripted. It's ridiculous.
Like, in the World Series,
like you have to be a general with a gut feeling. You do. Like you can't lead men by numbers. You're not going to lead these ruthless Neanderthals that are pumping testosterone, looking to mash baseballs everywhere by pulling out a calculator and saying like, I think we're going to try this right now because statistically this is what this is saying. Like, fuck that. Like you have to manage those people that you have. And there's way more to that than the stats, right? Like how many times would you have pulled a Mariano Rivera, but you leave him in because it's Mariano Rivera. There's something there.
Well, you think of like that's a valid point, Matt. Like in the 2003, the Aaron Boone game, hit the home run. Mariano went 3 innings.
Mm-hmm.
People forget about that. And he's a 1-inning guy. Joe Torre kept him in for 3 innings. Kept him in. Now that would not happen. If that was, you fast forward 19 years, Aaron Boone is pulling Mariano Rivera, and Aaron Boone doesn't get the chance to hit the home run.
Yep.
Right.
But that's what irritates me about these advanced stats and what's happening is because it's becoming this statistical matchup rather than a person. Like, and yes, I feel like if you're an effective manager, you have to be sitting there aware of the stats. You have to be aware if the guy at the plate has an opportunity to get a hit off of this sort of pitcher, or if he just doesn't in general. But you also have to know that guy's personality. Like that guy might be foaming at the mouth and saying, I can get a hit for you. Like I can absolutely get a hit for you right now. And if you're a good manager, you're putting people like that in, but it's not happening anymore.
Like, yeah, maybe I'll give myself a homework assignment here and before the season's over, and I'll do a would Derek Jeter been at bat when he became Mr. November with the analytics and the stats and everything else? Would he have been given the chance because he didn't hit well off right-handers on a Sunday afternoon? You know what I mean? Like those stats that happen. Like would Reggie Jackson been up to bat for all 3 home runs because, well, in later innings you'll have this guy, a defensive substitution. Like, let the guys just play. They got to that level that they're at because they can play. Mm-hmm. And if there's these numbers that are attached to the day before you even start, you're taking away no hitters, long outings. You're taxing your bullpen more because, well, they only pitch 5 innings. So now you got to have a lineup who has or your 25-man roster has 14 freaking pitchers on it. So now your bench only has 2 players.
But this is my problem with that. Like to add these stats to baseball turns it into football. It just turns it into old men playing a game with young pawns. And like baseball is supposed to be an opportunity for those players that can rise above, give them a chance to do it. Like all of the great moments in baseball. I'll bet if you went back and looked at all the late home runs, the strikeouts, the this, the that, I'll bet that none of those. I bet if you pulled like the top 20 iconic baseball moments of all time, I'll bet if you plugged in modern statistics of baseball, they wouldn't have had the opportunity for those plays to have happened because it was a ridiculous thought in this new scope of stats. You know what I mean? Like that guy wouldn't have been at the plate. This guy wouldn't have pitched. This guy wouldn't have been that. But it's so important. And it's so important, especially when you have like real professional athletes who are going to do anything to beat that other player. And like that's so much to me. You know what I mean? If you have a professional athlete with a heart like Bob Probert, you play him because he's an animal. You play him. He's going to perform for you. Like, who cares about the stats?
I 100% agree. Like, eventually, it's got to come down to eye test and gut feeling eventually to win championships. And Oakland hasn't been successful. And they had a whole movie made up, Moneyball, which was the biggest crock of shit put on the American public because they had Zito, Mulder, and Hudson pitching for him. It's never once mentioned. I talked about on the podcast before. Those three dudes were never mentioned in the movie. They were three of the best pitchers in baseball. That's why they won 20 games in a row. Had nothing to do with Jeremy Giambi taking a walk.
No, not at all. And those, I remember that pitching staff, and like, I remember watching the highlights, and like, it was ridiculous. Every other day, you'd see Zito throw that 12. Remember that 12-6?
Oh, just gross.
It was dropping 4 feet in 3 feet.
He got paid a lot of money by the San Francisco Giants after that. But you know what? That paid off for the Giants because they won the World. He got the one good start in the World Series that year. I think it was 2012 season they won the World Series. He had one great start. They won 10, 12, and 14, I think it was. And everybody was anti-Zito, but they didn't have an arm. They put Zito in, and he had a great outing, and they won the World Series for it. And, you know, they were paying him 20-some million bucks a year, and he was the highest paid bench guy ever. But no, I hope baseball can kind of, like you said, they can get a manager and get guys in that can have gut feel, like Joe Torre used to with the analytics guys, because it could probably make for some pretty fantastic baseball. Anyways, make sure you keep listening to the show. Talk to people about the show on Facebook, and we're on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't even know what's going on half the time. The producer takes care of most of that stuff. I don't even know what's going on like right now, to be honest with you. But there's things happening in the background. iTunes, Spotify. Talk to people wherever you listen to your podcasts. Yeah, you ever want to get in a good debate about any sport, whether it be hockey, baseball, football? All you got to do is say 3 simple letters, HOF, and it'll be a great Saturday afternoon debate around the tavern, the bar, the lounge, wherever you are, park, ball diamond, hockey arena. You say Hall of Fame, you mention a player's name, and the debate will ensue. It's crazy how people who don't watch every game, like I watch a lot of baseball, and I have my opinion on guys, but I can have an opinion because I watch a lot of games. Guys can have an opinion about a Hall of Fame kind of a career when they didn't really see the guy play other than in the playoffs, I guess, because that's when most fans watch baseball. We don't have a lot of big baseball dorks like you or myself, Matt, that watch multiple games throughout the season, multiple teams. It's funny to me how people can have an opinion about Alan Trammell, but not even know what position he played. They just hear about things. You know what I mean? So we'll go through some guys. We'll start with the steroid guys. You tell me Hall of Fame or not. I'm not like I'm with you. The Hall of Fame, let's get this straight. The Hall of Fame is a museum. First and foremost, it's a museum about the game.
Yes.
That's the first thing we have to establish there. And like you said earlier on today's show, the steroid era was part of the game for a period. And so that should be in the history of the game. Did guys do things that they probably wouldn't have done without steroids? Maybe. Did guys produce more than they would have? Maybe. Was everybody on them? Maybe. But it was a part of the game for sure.
Yep. What I can't stand when baseball people are like, and I think it's the time they can spend idle on their hands, but I can't stand how it's become this like religion style referendum on the quality of person that's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. All the Hall of Fame is, like you said, is a museum. It should be at its core, it should be a snapshot in time of what was happening in the game at that moment for those players. Like, I don't even think there needs to be an asterisk for steroid players. I think that if the Hall of Fame is doing its job, it says loudly and proudly, there was a pile of steroids in the game right now, and these guys were mashing the ball, just so all of you know. But in the time, this is what was happening. Like, Mark McGwire needs to be in the Hall of Fame for what happened, that 70 or 72 home run or whatever that was that year. All these players that are accused of steroid use, like, I don't care. I don't care if they're of poor moral quality. they were the best players in the world at that time, and that's what they were doing. And if the Hall of Fame wants to do their job, just say that out loud. Just say that. Like, these guys were all juiced up, they were all boosted up, they were all doing different things. But again, if the Hall of Fame is doing its job, I think it's saying aloud what was happening, like the facts that they know of what was happening, and then they should be presenting the players who they know weren't on steroids in that era. Like, I think it's important for the Hall of Fame to say that Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., players like this played in the league when steroids were common, and they weren't doing it. That's an important thing to say in the Hall. And it's also important to say that Barry Bonds was this big when he was a rookie, and he was jacked at the end, and he was doing steroids. But Barry Bonds was the greatest. I believe Barry Bonds was the greatest batter of all time. Steroids or not, he got the bat right there on the ball.
He's right there. Anyways, okay, let's start with Bonds. You put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. Right at the front door. Life-size mannequin.
His head's almost as big as yours.
It would be now, all those steroids.
His actually did grow. It's like an orange and a toothpick, that thing. Anyways, do you think that if Barry Bonds would come out and say, in a candid interview on ESPN, if he come out and say, yeah, I was on the junk, do you think that he would get more of a positive response from writers?
No, because I think there's a real like haters hate mentality in sports. I think that people that knew how to play the game, I think that people that understood the game, I think people that were in the game at that time, like I think if you sat down some greats beside Barry Bonds, I think you would get an appropriate answer from those men. I think if you sat Ken Griffey Jr. beside him and he said, look, I was doing steroids, and Jr. said, I wasn't doing steroids, I think you're going to see that the players that were actually playing really didn't give a shit. Like, I don't think that the players that were playing in that time, if they weren't doing steroids, really cared that much.
Well, that's the thing, because every team had a teammate who was doing it.
Yep. Everyone. Like, you had an opportunity to do it. And if anyone was really that precious about it, people would have been flying the flag and saying like, whoa. I am not playing against that guy. He's jacked up on steroids. This is unfair. And no one said it because no one gave a shit.
Do you put in another guy, Mitchell Report, back in 2000, I don't know, 6 or 7, whenever that came out? Manny Ramirez. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Oh man. Oh, he's so good.
There was why where he was the best player. He was the best hitter in baseball.
Easily. But you know why I wouldn't put Manny in the Hall of Fame? Because he was the person that changed baseball fashion. They were tight pants and wearing stirrups, and Manny was the first one to start wearing baggy pants,
wearing pajamas out there,
cleats, and I hate that. I think that you have to wear stirrups. You should have to wear knee highs if you're a professional baseball player. So
just Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson was the best looking ball player out there. That's the one thing where Jeter got it wrong with his uniform, was not having stirrups. Roger Clemens, Hall of Fame career before he went to the Jays. Then he won a couple Cy Youngs with the Jays, I believe. There's no doubt in my mind that he was on the junk.
Mm-hmm.
I put him in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best pitchers ever.
He has to be, but it should say in the Hall of Fame, this is Roger Clemens. This is what he did. Also, he was involved in the most prolific time of steroid use in history. Decide what you will. Like, that's what it should be saying in the Hall of Fame. It shouldn't just say, like, I think that's the distinction that people are trying to make, is like when they say keep them out, I think they're saying that the Hall of Fame is going to put a plaque up on the wall and say nothing about it. Like, all these placards should say, look, there's a lot of allegation for what these guys were putting into their body at the time, but this is who was there at the time. But yes, just on the grounds of who he was, of course he goes in there. He was so dominant. Like, he's one of those players that we were talking about. Like, if you're a manager and you're managing your guys well, you're putting in the ruthless animals, and he's a ruthless animal. The reason he was doing steroids is because he wanted to do anything to win.
Remember when he threw that broken bat at Piazza?
Yeah, and then was like, what's up now?
Just what the thought it was the ball. Like, his explanation was even more messed up, because I thought it was the ball. It's not beanball, man. Like, you throw the ball to first base on a ground ball. Like, what?
And you remember
what was that?
The look on Piazza's face. He was
like,
man.
What the fuck, because didn't he, on the Subway series where they actually played a day-night doubleheader in the Bronx and in Queens, didn't Clemens plunk Piazza right in the coconut? Knocked him down, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, it was his shoulder, it was his head, but he definitely went down. I remember like him.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Let's go to geez, it wasn't good. Let's go to a couple guys. Cabrera with the Tigers, one of the all-time greatest hitters. He's in.
Yes, and only because I should say this too. I watched him the first game I watched in Detroit. Yeah, the first game I watched in Detroit, I watched him play, and he was
I forgot you went to that ballpark. How is that? Nice
unbelievable. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's an oversized high school facility. Like, it's so beautiful. Like it looks old school. It feels old school. It's beautiful. But he was so dominant in one game that he was one of those players that you watch and you're looking and you're saying, like, on a field of professionals, this guy is so much better than everyone else that they're not even playing the same game as he is. And so yes, I'm jamming him in there.
We'll go with some pitchers here. Clayton Kershaw, he's a lock.
I can't stand Kershaw.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm sure I've whined you about this. I don't even know why. I think it's because he isn't like he's such a nice guy. I can't stand it. Like,
that son of a bitch. How dare he?
He's just like, he's so nice. Like,
which is funny you say that, because I've watched your YouTube and your Facebook things with just be nice. You said that was out of your yap. Just be nice. And Clayton Kershaw is a nice guy, and you don't like him because he's nice.
But he's a professional athlete. Like, he's not supposed to be nice on the field of play. You know what I mean? Like, he's such a, I don't know. I'm sure statistically he should be in the Hall. I don't have an appreciation for those kinds of players. Like, I like players that are talking shit, that are throwing at your head, that are stirring it up, that are making you uncomfortable. He's just exclusively amazing, which I suppose isn't a bad thing.
Does winning a championship, is it a must to get in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
No, not at all.
I think in hockey it matters a lot.
I think for sure.
I think in hockey you need to win some kind of a championship, and the Stanley Cup, it helps a lot.
It does. That is a huge distinction between the two sports. It's hard to be an amazing hockey or a great hockey player and have never won. And hockey players, more so than baseball players, are pursuing winning the cup. It doesn't mean as much in baseball as it does in hockey. Like, hockey, it's so ingrained in you as a kid. Like, it's like the Stanley Cup it's a whole other thing. Like, it's not the same as winning the World Series.
Let's go back 30 years, meaning you were barely alive back then, but a guy like Daryl Strawberry, yeah, he ran into some personal problems and everything else, but there was a 4 or 5 years. He got 4 World Series championships. One of the most dominant hitters of his time when he wasn't on the junk, like the other junk, the white the white junk, not steroids,
the white powder.
Like, without his background, is Daryl Strawberry a Hall of Famer?
Yes, Daryl Strawberry was so goddamn dominant and so amazing. And, like, again, to baseball lore, when I watched a game in Montreal, the first major league game I ever watched, there's a mark on the roof in the stadium, and it says, "This is where Daryl Strawberry hit the roof with a fly ball." Nobody else had hit the roof in that stadium with anything. Daryl scrapes the rafters, but he was so dominant, regardless if he's smoking crack or doing blow or doing whatever. I don't care what he's doing in the off season. I don't care what he's doing after the game, but on the field, he was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer, and the 4 World Series championships doesn't hurt. Let's go to the question. I think I talked about it in one of my very first podcasts way back in September, August, when we started this darn thing. It's been a question for 30 years. Whenever he signed that deal with Abe Bartlett Giamatti to get banned from baseball for life, that he wouldn't be part of the Hall of Fame, wouldn't be part of baseball ever again. He signed it for a reason, because he knew he was doing wrong. Mm-hmm. Pete Rose. It says right on the rules, right on every minor league facility, major league facility, there's rules that baseball has. Do not bet on baseball. He did. He admitted to it, signed that deal that says he's going to be out. He's in declining health. He ain't doing good. Do you put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame?
He's he's a hard one for me because yes, I think he belongs in the Hall, but I also understand that when people say things like, you can't be in the Hall if you cheated because you could have changed the outcome of a game, for sure. But I don't know, what he did as a player is just like, for him to not be in the Hall, I just think is like, it's like a religion. It's just like people stopping him from going in there. Like, I don't think I think that, again, it should say in the Hall of Fame, like, this is Pete Rose. Also, he cheated in baseball. Like, he cheated as a manager. That's it. But this is what he did as a player. Like, it's, if you're treating it as a museum, there should be an entire wing that is of Pete Rose. There just should be.
My thoughts have changed. They ping pong back and forth a lot on this. Man, how he was as a player. Let's do a hypothetical, because you do that on podcasts, and it doesn't matter. No one listens anyways. But you can. Let's just say Wayne Gretzky had obviously a Hall of Fame career. Mm-hmm. Then he went on to coach the Phoenix Coyotes. Complete disaster.
Yep.
Let's say that Gretzky cheated, whatever happened. It's obviously hypothetical. Like, he cheated the game somehow, paying off refs or whatever. Got caught. Do you keep Wayne Gretzky out of the Hockey Hall of Fame for what he did as a player because of what he did as a coach?
But you couldn't. But that's what I mean. Like, it's
so that's what I'm. Yeah.
It's such a slippery slope, and like, that's what I can't stand when I hear sports writers talk about it, or they're so matter of fact. They're like, no, absolutely not. He can't do this. He can't do that. Like, yeah, if you're saying that about a manager who just managed baseball, then yes, keep them out. But that's Pete Rose. Like, watch your mouth. You're talking about Pete Rose.
Yeah.
Like, that's what is he, the greatest statistics batter ever? Like, what was
most hits all time?
Like, most hits all time. That's insane.
World Series and blah blah blah. Part of the Big Red Machine in the 70s, and they played a long career. Like, all of it. He's Pete Rose.
Yeah,
one of the top 10. And then I think it was the 2000 World Series when they had all the players on the field, and the top 10 players of all time, and he was still one of them.
Yeah. But this is what I don't like about the sports writers. Like, it's a religious institution is all it is. Like, they're not making appropriate decisions for baseball. Mm-hmm. They're not making appropriate decisions for the game. They're sitting around touching each other's dicks, talking about what entertains them. And this person did me wrong, and I used to cheer for him, and he did this. Now we should keep him out. Like, it doesn't make any sense. That person was in the game, and sports writers are not. They are sitting on the fringes writing about it, and they should shut their mouths and do their jobs and write about what those guys did while they were in the game.
And that's the thing. Like, they talk about growing the game for the younger kids, and having a guy like and taking the history out of the game and nailing these guys to the cross. Yeah, baseball's a game about tradition. I get it. But banning a guy, and it's when people, like, say my nephew's age, he's 20 years old. When he hears Pete Rose, all he thinks about is negative aspects of what Pete Rose did.
For sure.
Man, I think I said keep him out last time I talked about this, but now I'm thinking maybe they should put the guy in and give him his day in the sun. His last, like I say, he's got some failing health, and maybe it's time to put the guy in.
But this is like more to my point. Like, Ty Cobb is the greatest batter of all time. He batted .411, I think, in the early 1900s, and he also pistol whipped a man to death in a back alley. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Known racist. He would never have been wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. There's no getting around that. Like,
not even partly. Like,
yeah,
a plantation owner raised in Georgia who played pro ball. Like, he was not interested in a mixed race league. He was still the greatest baseball player to have ever lived. I mean, everyone, if you look at the numbers, he's .411, he's Ty Cobb, he's an asshole, he killed a guy, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and then everybody's holier now with with Kurt Schilling not getting in for his nefarious comments over the years and what he's been up to, but Ty Cobb's in. So
yeah, like,
it's just but Schilling and his bloody sock aren't, and that's part of baseball history.
That's what I mean. Like, Schilling and his bloody sock is an excellent example. Like, if you're a baseball fan and someone showed you just a photo of a sock, you'd be like, Kurt Schilling. Like, that's how iconic it is.
Yeah. And then the Red Sox won their first World Series in 2 billion years, whatever it was. Fucking losers. Anyways, Matt, Thanks for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun catching up with you, talking baseball. It's my favorite sport. There's no getting around it. Any closing remarks you got out there for our like 6 or 7 listeners out there?
No, it was fun. Thank you for allowing me to banter. I like talking, eh?
Well, that's one thing that people will say about me and you. We're not quiet, to say the least. Anyways, take care of each other, but more importantly, take care of yourself, because we need you around. Keep your stick on the ice and don't swing at the high ones. We will talk to you guys on Tuesday. Thanks for listening to the show, and catch us on iTunes and everywhere else.